Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world today. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Women with Grit, where we interview dynamic women around the world who are truly, truly making a difference in their cities, communities, and their industry. So, how are you doing, Lee? Good to see you.
And I'm doing well, thanks. How about you? Good to see you as well.
Fantastic. Let me tell you, it has been a week, a whirlwind of a week, a whirlwind of a month, actually, for me. This month has just been so crazy. I feel like I've just been running from one thing to the next. How about you?
Yeah, it's the same. It'll be like this until the end of the year, I'm sure. Between
Pretty
work and
much.
kids, yeah. And then, of course, for you, were coming off of a birth month, not a birthday, and so I'm sure it was a little catch up done there, and some recuperating and everything. And but clients don't want to hear about that, and they don't care.
Not at
Whatever
all.
you
It's we just get it done, right? We just have to get it done and keep going and keep moving forward. But I'm excited
right.
to be on tonight. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween! Yes, it's a big night.
It is. You guys got anything planned?
Yeah, we'll have some people over. We kind of do a duel. Our youngest, his birthday is November 7th, and we kind of just throw it all into right now into Halloween. We'll have a Halloween party, have a couple of his friends over. He's only 4, so
Aw.
he doesn't require much. So we'll take advantage of these younger years when we can throw it into something else, and later, he'll want his own thing. So that's how we're gonna rock with it this time.
I
Yeah.
get
How
it.
about you all? What you got?
My
You got
son's
some
not
later on?
he's not really into it that much. He's not really into it, to be honest with you. His birthday's on the 10th of November. And
Okay.
he's excited because we're on the opposite side, not really combining things, but he just wants to go to Andretti's, take a couple friends. So we're just going to go to
Okay.
Andretti's and do that. So
Okay.
nothing
All right.
tonight. We will just hang out at the house and, hand out candy, I guess.
Hand out candy. There you go. All right. Well, yeah.
Well,
Some kids are gonna be happy with you all
there we
tonight.
go. I'm so excited to be on, and we have another amazing guest in store tonight. We have Samara B. Davis, who will come and grace the stage. But before we bring her on, let's go ahead and welcome all of you who are joining in. Be sure to leave your city and state in the chat so that we can be sure to greet you appropriately throughout the duration of our show. So we thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Go grab your drink of choice, grab your favorite snack, because we are on. And again, welcome to Women with Grit, where we interview dynamic women around the world. Be sure to like us and share this on all of our platforms, including YouTube, Facebook, as well as our website, www.womenwithgrit.com. Facebook, we are facebook.com/exceptional women with grit. And on YouTube, we are youtube.com/the @ symbol, right? And then women with grit. So excited to be on tonight. Anything going on, like Lee, before I bring up our guests?
Nothing much. I'm ready to dive in. It's I always look forward to these conversations. I learn so much, and then as I'm out in the community, I hear so many people that are touched by the our guests and what they have to say. So they're learning, they're gleaning good information, and leave out feeling positive. I think the other thing is they everyone feels like, hey, I'm not the only one out there in this grind trying to get to the top, because I'm meeting other people on Women with Grit that are doing the same thing. And now, and they understand that the reason they're successful or they're getting as far as they are is because they too have grit.
Exactly. And for me, it's the same thing that I hear. And then also the shared experiences, to your point of just not being alone and recognizing that while you're accomplishing so many great things, that there's spaces of transparency and things that we're all overcoming on a daily basis. So, all right, I got some new lenses, right? So I'm
Okay,
going
I
to
see it. I see it.
try to get this. All right. Bear with me if I jack this up. I'm hoping that I won't, but I'm still adjusting to my lenses and frames. All right, Miss Samara Davis, with over 7 years of diversity and inclusion advocacy, plus 20 years of marketing and event planning experience, Samara knows exactly what it takes to create a one-of-a-kind experience that cultivates and captures the attention of diverse audiences. Her work leaves your palate and your conscience wanting more, with a greater appreciation of bourbon and passion for inclusion within the spirits industry. Ever the advocate of all things balanced, Samara founded the Black Bourbon Society in 2016 upon realizing that there was a lack of diversity towards people of color within the bourbon community. Through her work with Black Bourbon Society, she has partnered with several brands, including Woodford Reserve, Maker's Mark, Glenfiddich, and Jack Daniels. Samara has produced multi-city campaigns, curated dinner and spirits pairings, and led interactive workshops for consumers and trade professionals in markets such as Atlanta, New York, Los Angeles, as well as Chicago. She also organizes executive trips to distilleries and hosts an annual bourbon conference, Bourbon Boulay, every year in Louisville for her 40,000 plus Black Bourbon Society members and followers. Named one of Wine Enthusiast's top 40 under 40 for 2020 and featured in the New York Times, Forbes, Black Enterprise, and more, Samara shares her experience as an executive bourbon steward and WSET Level 2 Award in Spirits and Distinction to educate her members, judge spirits competitions, and to analyze the quality of spirits for up and coming brands. As a diversity and inclusion consultant, she works with executives and entrepreneurs to help understand and strengthen their relationship with consumers of color and to develop and refine their brand's marketing strategy. Samara is also the founding executive director of Diversity Distilled, a nonprofit consulting firm that works with brands in the spirits industry to identify and address their diversity and inclusion needs within the workforce. Through Diversity Distilled Boss Program, she coaches Black-owned spirits founders on how to grow their brands and be exceptional leaders. She also speaks to organizations and has spoken on several panels on issues regarding race, DE&I, and in the spirits industry. Although she has accomplished much in her career, Samara's favorite role is simply being mommy to her two children, Alva and Rex. She is married to her business partner, Armand Davis, who serves as the Chief Revenue Officer for Society, the parent company of Black Bourbon Society, Society Marketing Group, and Diversity Distills. With a true love for inclusive culture that bourbon naturally brings, Samara is taking the industry by storm and inspiring much needed change within one glass at a time. So welcome to the stage, Samara. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. That was quite lengthy. I feel like there's no need for us to chat now.
You're so very accomplished. You know, we believe in giving your roses.
We're going to bring that bio to life now.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. And so you're in the industry, spirits and overall, especially bourbons, whiskey, brandy, scotch. That's typically a male or seemingly, an industry. And I don't mean from the supplier, definitely there too, but from the end user, that's typically a male type of enjoyment, if you will. What led you to? So I'm going to take it that you were a bourbon connoisseur or enthusiast, at least at some point, before you embarked on the rest of this your enterprise.
Yes. So I started drinking whiskey back 2015, 2016, before I even got started with Black Bourbon Society. And really, I started Black Bourbon Society because I was falling so in love with the spirit, and I wanted to connect with other people who loved it, collected it as much as I did.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, with that eager to kind of look for a bourbon community, I started looking at, different societies that were already out there. And of course, there's, the Kentucky Bourbon Society. There were all these, Facebook groups that were kind of more national and global even. They even had global ones. And at that time I lived in San Francisco, so there was a San Francisco Whiskey Society. But you're absolutely right. Most of those societies were middle-aged white males, and I didn't fit in with them at all. In fact, in some of those societies that I tried to connect with and try to engage and have conversation with, I even received a little bit of pushback, a little bit of racism and sexism in there.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple things that happen, as it would come, as all stories kind of fall into place. While also searching for this bourbon community, I was doing some third party work with a local brand in San Francisco. I'm helping them to market and promote their products. And it was the conversation that I had with that brand that really, pushed me to develop and create Black Bourbon Society.
Mm-hmm.
We were creating these elaborate events, but again, the brands they weren't creating these events with the intention of getting in front of diverse audiences. They were very much, again, kind of falling right in line with this stereotype that only men drink it, or middle-aged white males of a certain demographic primarily drink aged spirits. And that's just not true. So I created Black Bourbon Society in Oakland, California, and our first three events were, we would sell tickets and they would sell out in less than 10 minutes.
Oh wow.
And come to find out, there's a lot of bourbon drinkers that are Black, and there's a lot of female bourbon drinkers as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so so we immediately came into the space at this time when there was more interest than what brands were relying on, and their data was actually um, it was outdated.
Okay.
Their data, and it was kind of just falling into some sort of stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
It really not really based in data. But when we
Okay.
looked at it back in 2016, when the business case for this was that African Americans spend, I think at that time, $3.8 billion a year on wine, spirits, and tobacco,
Wow.
and we over index in that category. And so when you explain that to the brands and say like, hey, no, this is a demographic that is untapped, that is not really looked at, and you realize how much this demographic is spending, then maybe you do want to invest some time really reaching out to diverse audiences instead of just relying on the tried and true.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, that's definitely. I think you see more and more women that are drinking, comfortably drinking,
Mm-hmm.
and enjoying spirits now. Whereas my grandmother, who passed maybe 10 years ago at 97, every night had what she called a highball. And so, and so that was, it was neat. It was, cognac or a bourbon or, what have you. And she just always enjoyed that. So thank you for that.
Same. My great grandmother had a closet full of brown, and
Okay.
and she would go in and she would get her a little nip and she would sip her whiskey too.
Hmm.
And I think like it just kind of goes back again, like the stereotypes, right? Of like, oh, it's when whiskey is a man's drink. It'll put hair on your chest. Like all these like
Right.
unproven, like just what do
Yeah.
they call it? Like not even like a wives' tales or something
A
like.
mythical
Yeah,
or
but
yeah. Yeah.
whatever. It's not real.
It's not really.
With our society, 45%, it kind of varies, right? At one point it was 50-50 with our membership, but now it's about 45 to 48% are women.
Mm.
So yes, like women are very much involved in whiskey. And if you see between in the past 5 to 7 years, you've seen tremendous growth within the industry of women stepping into leadership positions, distilling, blending, actually being a part of of the process of making whiskey.
Right.
If you look at, companies that are coming up, and you're looking at their corporate ladder and you're seeing who's the director of what, most of
Mhm.
those are women as well. So there's women all over this industry, and yes, definitely women do drink whiskey.
Yeah, and I know Sherelle has a question for you. I'm going to say something that's funny. It's stereotypical, it's all of that. But yeah, I never thought of San Francisco making any kind of bourbon. And of course, I live in Tennessee, so we don't allow anybody to make whiskey if you're outside of Tennessee. uh, but to
That's
your
very
point about the women,
short-sighted, but okay.
what did you say?
It's very short-sighted, but yes, most
It is.
Tennesseans feel that way.
Yeah.
That's why you have Tennessee whiskey instead of bourbon, but Tennessee
Right.
whiskey is technically bourbon.
Yeah, we
Sorry.
have songs that say Tennessee whiskey. And of course, you mentioned women in the spirits industry. Of course, Fawn Weaver is
Mhm.
here with Uncle Nearest, and doing very very well, and just more and more women are in the industry. So congratulations! I'll pass it to Sherelle. I know she's got a question for you.
No, this is good. I mean, like you've kind of started already the question that I have, which we'd love to kick off our segment, just really learning more about you. You talked about your grandmother, but tell us your unique story of grit.
Well, creating a business in the spirits industry, like we just kind of said, where there really wasn't diversity and inclusion in the spirits industry, especially in 2016, that was grit in itself. And Lee mentioned Fawn Weaver, like Black Bourbon Society predates Uncle Nearest.
Hmm.
So when I really started building this organization, there was no Black owned spirits brands on the market, right? And so it really was just looking at what was already out there and really having the grit and the courage to go into these brands that are owned by, again, predominantly white men in Kentucky in the South, and having some sincere conversations with them and really explaining to them the need to diversify their marketing practices and their strategies. That takes grit in itself. Just on a personal note, I I kind of subscribe to the same stereotypes that most people do about women in the spirits industry. In fact, when I first started Black Bourbon Society, I spent 6 months in anonymity. I didn't tell anybody it was my company. I ran a Facebook page. I ran an Instagram account with just Black Bourbon Society. We would post constantly. We would have, content about whiskey. And we were starting to develop a following. But it wasn't until 6 months into it that I made a mistake by posting something on my personal page instead of on my Black Bourbon Society page, that basically outed me as the founder of this organization.
Oh wow.
So just personally, dealing with my own interpretation of stereotypes and even subscribing to that, like it took courage to finally like step into this leadership role and just own it as mine and not really care what judgment came along with a Black woman who has small children who drinks whiskey, you
Hmm.
know? So from that point all the way through, to going through a divorce, getting married again, moving across country, uh, opening up a marketing business, and then also having a nonprofit, that does this. Like all of it takes grit to do. But I guess I got used to it. I got used to the grit that it took. But in the beginning, it was more judgment on myself and, just being worried about what other people thought. Like, I think that took the most grit. And that was more work than the actual work of growing my businesses and making them are what they are today.
Mm.
Right, and leaning into that, the nature of feeling comfortable walking in your space and really getting outside of what people say. Because, in the same respect, you talked about how it took 6 months for you to really begin to, exemplify your face in that. what do you feel was the hindrance in being able to kind of push past that to where you say, okay, this is mine or this is my baby and I'm going to continue to walk in it and really own the space or own the room, as you said?
Well, like I said, it was kind of some self-judgment in there, but it
Yeah.
was also I didn't have a great support system either, right? I didn't have a supportive spouse that really believed and saw the vision that I had. In fact, I had someone who was setting up roadblocks while I'm trying to trail blades ahead. And so, just the energy, the emotional energy, and the mental energy it takes to even get through that before you can get going on your business. It's just a lot. And so, yeah, that's where the grit came in. But, I figured that out very quickly where the lack of support was coming from, the lack of faith, even some of the sabotaging behaviors were coming in. And I use this time, and my story, of growing my business is like the same story of my personal discovery, healing, and also into even my spirituality. But I took the time to really self reflect and do the work within myself, and that, like, I needed to build my own confidence up, and I needed to build my own wings up so that I could fly. And so in those beginning years, I spent a lot of time on myself, just more than I did on my own business.
I love that. And thank you. So you're in the space of marketing, and I'm going to come back to the other question, which is really around self-limiting beliefs, because you've kind of divulged some of
Yeah.
those, which is, learning how to occupy and kind of work through that space of confidence and building that, because that's so important.
Mhm.
And you're not only doing, like you say, you've had to do this in work, but also in your personal. When it comes to marketing and the brand awareness piece, would you say that for companies that you've seen, whether it be in your industry or companies in general, or rather, the question I have is, how does confidence play into advocating for one's business from a branding perspective?
So from a marketing perspective, I've always had marketing like in my blood. So that's the easy part for me. Like seeing the problem, identifying the problem, with marketing, with advertising, with bottle placement, labeling, and those things. Just like my eye catches that immediately. So I felt confident in that lane all day. I can critique something to pieces, if you let me.
Right, right.
But how did, with advocating for brands, especially, from a diversity and inclusion lens, even back then in 2016, you have to let's go back and let's kind of look at the political landscape at that time. Like that was a summer of Fernando Castillo, right? And there's like, like coming out of Trayvon Martin, that's like Michael Brown is someplace up in that time period. So like we have all these situations that are going on where, again, and I hate to say this because that was in 2016, and I feel like we deal with the same stuff in 2023. Like nothing has changed, right? Nothing has evolved. With lines to that, but we had all these internal emotions going on, inside of us, and and as African Americans, we were already feeling like we weren't heard, we weren't respected, our lives didn't matter, all these things. Then you layer on silly stuff like a Dove commercial that came out during that time period where, a black woman takes off her white t-shirt and she pops up as a white lady because all of a sudden she's clean. Or you come up with, there's some advertisements that came out of Brazil with Heineken. You guys remember that commercial? I know y'all remember
I don't
that.
remember it.
Oh my
I
God.
don't either. I'll look it up and see if I can find it.
You got to. H&M during that time period, they had a
I
shirt
remember
with
the
like
H&M with the
monkeys on
monkeys.
it,
Yeah,
and they had the black kids in the advertising with the monkeys on it.
right.
Heineken again had this, and this was in Brazil, so I don't think we ever saw this commercial here, but there's you know a bar scene, and the bartender passes by all like three beautiful black Brazilian models sitting at the bar. They pass it all the way down and it lands at the white girl who grabs it and drinks it.
Hmm.
Like it's like it's not even subliminal.
Right. It's
It's
direct.
just
Yeah.
Yeah.
and what I realized very quickly is like the only reason why these are making it to this level is because there's nobody black in the room,
Hmm.
right? There's no one that says, that's not gonna fly
Right.
in the room. So it was very quickly that I realized, like, no, we've got to tackle diversity in marketing.
Mm.
So I can speak up all day about that. Like, it gets me. I'm so passionate and riled up about it. I had all the confidence in the world. I was like, let me help you because y'all messing up.
Yeah, and and I have some other questions I'm gonna ask more on the personal side, but one of the things I want to ask, I want to go back to kind of your nature of being able to pick stuff, pick at stuff and
Mhm.
analyze and look at the marketing. How did you? Because what I find, I've been in business a long time, and I talk to entrepreneurs or people that want to be entrepreneurs, and one of the things that they do a lot of times is over analyze and over ask and so they never get to the point where they've started said business or start whatever their journey is. How did you get to the point where you didn't go that far, even though by nature you could have? What At what point did you cut it off and say, hey, this doesn't have to be perfect right away, but this is the point where we should launch?
Oh, I still struggle with that now.
Hmm.
I think it's just it's that natural like little it's the ego, right? That kind of just kind of holds you back a little bit. It kind of wants to protect you from jumping off the cliff.
Hmm.
And so I just had to learn how to move past it, especially when I started my business. And I
Right.
remember I started this business in anonymity because I was scared to show myself as the leader of it. So
Right.
that speaks like now that I look back at it, that speaks volumes.
Hmm.
But I remember I was in therapy and I had to go to therapy. All entrepreneurs need a therapist, by the way.
Hmm.
Um, but I was in therapy and I was talking it over with my therapist, and I was expressing why I was so afraid to own my own business, and like I felt this passion and I felt this calling, but I was still intimidated, and it had to do with my father because my father owns his own business and he was very successful, but then he lost his business, right? He
Hmm.
made some very foolish business decisions and he ended
Right.
up losing everything. And so that watching my father go through that, created extra fear within me
Okay.
because I didn't want to fail. Like I saw my father fail.
Hmm.
Uh, but I had to realize, like, okay, he owns that trauma. I don't own that. That's his stuff. And
Right.
that doesn't have to be my story. I can create my own story for my own self.
Hmm.
And so that allowed me to just kind of really have the confidence to get going on my business. And now my business is. And then, yeah, that perfectionism that you kind of talk about, like they kind of over analyze, overthink it. It's not right. It's not perfect yet.
Hmm.
We just have to recognize what that is. And that's, it's self-sabotage, right? And it's fear. So it's like when we recognize like, okay, I'm just scared to
Hmm.
jump, then you can say, all right, let me get over myself. Let me get over my own ego and let me
Right.
just go ahead and do this.
Right. Hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I want to go a little bit more on the personal side, and I know this is an area that a lot of people um, deal with. I guess all three of us at some point have been divorced, but there are a lot of people out there that have been, and some don't think they will ever get to the other side of it. Um,
Mhm.
as you were going through your divorce for whatever those reasons were, what are some of the things that you had to do personally to get to the other side? And then how did you, because some people make the same mistake over and over and over again.
Mhm.
What were some of the things that because I pray that you didn't, and I pray I didn't, but no, I know I didn't. But what do you do to recognize what some of the things were that why the relationship didn't work, and typically it's not just one sided. It's
Right.
because people in the marriage, right? Um, But what are some of the things that you did to kind of get yourself past that, get comfortable with, whether it was dating again and then getting married again, but then also, analyzing traits or things that, you felt would need to be different in your next relationship?
Therapy.
Okay.
That's the key word, right? No, I realized I did a lot of self reflection afterwards. And I really had to recognize patterns and recognize like, oh, this wasn't a healthy relationship for me. Well, why is that? Why is the personality from my ex-husband similar to my father's personality? Like, I had to kind of unravel all these things, and just admit the role that I played in it, even if you felt like you didn't play a even if it wasn't my fault, right?
Mm,
Like, I still played a role in the relationship. And it's just kind of admitting like, okay, some things just don't work out.
mm,
And being okay with that. Like, I don't believe in failure, right?
right. Mm,
As long as you, even if you make a mistake, even if something doesn't work out the way that you want it to, as long as you learn from it, then you didn't fail it. You
right.
got what you needed to get from it.
Mm,
So I really took this opportunity to like do a lot of self work and self reflection, so that I could learn from it and so that I could heal and I could move on, from it. And I will say that my husband now was my friend during that time period. And he was a great sounding board for that, right? Because he was also going through his own divorce.
okay.
And we were able to just kind of talk stuff out in a very just like non judgmental, very safe space.
Right.
And that helped. But no, I was seeing the therapist. I was, doing the meditations. I was going to the psychics. Like, I was like going through all the things, seeking all the sources, just so that I could have a better understanding of myself, and so that I could find some healing and some peace in it. You know?
Hmm.
I think that is so important.
Yeah.
Now, when you think about those that have championed your success along the way, or even you talked about your current husband that kind of helped you through that pivotal moment in life, who are
Yeah.
those people that have, been there either with you, and even if it's at different points in your life that you would attribute to being a part of your tribe?
Oh wow. Definitely my husband now, my current husband, was very integral in it. And um, just again being that sounding board, he was, he's a businessman, so we would talk business and just figure out how to grow my business. He I remember we went to this convention in New Orleans, and he was the one who got me my first deal for my bottle release that I had back then, right in 2018. But he was, very much like working on my behalf. Like, he believed in what I was doing, and he was so supportive. Like, he was doing everything he could in his power to see me succeed.
Okay.
And so he's definitely number one. But I had friends along the way. My good friend Bettina, she's also a fashion designer. She was starting her business around the same time that I was. And so we would, encourage each other and just be a support, just kind of talk about, our, again, why were we scared to make decisions? Why were we afraid to, make that large deposit or that large investment on something that could help our business grow 5 times? And so it was good to have another, female entrepreneur to just really talk and share the loneliness that also comes along with entrepreneurship. Because my friends who had regular jobs or were stay-at-home moms, like, they were supportive in the fact they're like, yay, go, like, that's great. But like,
Right.
it was very shallow and it wasn't very substantive,
Mm,
and not to say like I didn't appreciate that. Like, I needed all the cheers that I could get in the room. But having that other, entrepreneur, especially a female entrepreneur in the room, was, as a really close friend, was supportive. And then, over time it just changes, right? Like, one brand, someone within a brand sees the work that we're doing, and so they start opening doors. They start introducing me to someone else who then introduces me to somebody else. So it's like it just kind of happens over time. And then when I moved to I will say the last person who's really played a big role in that is my best friend Tamara. And I had kind of worked Black Urban Society by myself for a couple of years, and I kept telling my husband like, I need a Gail. Like if I'm Oprah, I need a Gail. Like I need somebody who can like get me, understand me, like just like help me navigate through stuff, like just be a real support for me.
Mm-hmm.
And like not even like an assistant would be too little of a title
Right.
for
Yeah.
the role, but
Right.
just I just needed a second mind, like a second set of brains to
Right.
help work through some of the things.
Mm-hmm.
And I reached out to my best friend Tamara, um, and I asked her, I said, hey, what are you doing these days? And she's like, oh, I just got off a project. Like, I'm not doing anything right now. I'm just actually kind of taking a break. And I was like, perfect. Can you just help me out just a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll pay you, but it's super loose. It's not a full-time job. Like you can continue to explore and do the crystal things and all the things that she wanted to do. But um, I asked her to come on and be my right hand person.
Okay.
And that has tremendously helped me. If anything, again, like I know the train keeps moving when I need to step away, like business keeps operating because
Right.
Tam's got it. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yep. So when you think about, now, how old are your kids?
My daughter's 13 and my son is 10.
Okay, great. Okay.
Mhm.
So it's a perfect time to have conversations with them, not only about what you do, but, about life and everything. What do when you envision, where what you want them to learn from you,
Mhm.
uh, whether it's by show or tell, as they say, show me a sermon, instead of telling me about it. But what is it that you want your kids to learn from you when they see mommy doing her thing, and I mean in your full life, so personal
Mhm.
side, spiritual side, work wise. What do you want them to see, learn, and then when you see them 10 years from now, 15 years from now, you know, you want to be able to say, "Oh wow, they learned that," and I feel, that's success just in the fact that they learned that for me.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Just this school year, we started a new motto, right? Called work hard, play hard.
Okay.
And that really like kind of sums up everything, right? It's like you see me working really hard. You see me on my couch, typing away, trying to get emails done and really focused. And they see their stepfather doing the same thing. They see us in the grind working on our businesses. But then it's time to close down the computer. Let's go have fun.
Hmm.
You know, like we go have fun, we celebrate even the smallest of wins, and we just enjoy, and we enjoy our time together.
Okay.
And that's the lesson that I ultimately want to teach them. And, they're 10 and 13, so they've got studies and, they've got homework and, they've got goals of their own for their own academic careers. And so it's like,
Right.
okay, let's work hard, put the devices down. You get in there, you read that book, you get your homework done. Like, let's grind, let's get this stuff done. And then as soon as we're done, like, let's go out, let's go do something. And
Hmm.
so that's the lesson that I want them to learn. I don't just want them to see me working, right?
Hmm.
Like, I just
Yeah.
don't want them to see me grinding, even if it is with grit, right? Like I don't want them just to see the grind of it and think that it's just this sacrifice, this just like, full, like intensive experience being an entrepreneur. I
Right.
want them to see the freedom in it. And I want
Hmm.
them to see the fun and the reward and also being an entrepreneur too. So yeah, so that's my overall goal for them, and we're just starting it now, just with the
Okay.
homework, you know,
Yeah. Yep.
like get that A, and then let's
Right.
go
Yeah.
party, you know.
Yeah, and that's such a good time to start that. I know my oldest son, I used to, and I tell my middle one now, hey, if the grades are good, the summer is off the hook. If the grades aren't that good, then summer is, it is what it is. But
Yeah.
I think the other thing that you're saying, which is really important, is that they see the work side and the play side. So many of my friends, and even I look at my parents. My dad was an attorney, and I didn't want to be an attorney, and none of his children, none of my brother and sister didn't want to be attorneys either because we never saw the off side.
Hmm.
I have a good friend who's a dentist, and his dad was an oral surgeon. His dad said, "Hey, are you going to take over the business?" And he said, "Oh no." And his dad was like, "Why?" He said, "Well, you said you never made any money. You work all the time." He said, "So I think I can just be a general dentist, and that'll give me some freedom." And so
Right.
I think a lot of times the way we model what we're really doing to our kids is important because we do want them to feel like, hey, you can put this work in, and then to your point, go have fun, and
Yeah.
and that, and the fun part's a requirement if you're putting the work in. So
Yeah.
I really like that.
Thank you.
Exactly. So I want to go back to something you said, which was, and this is really about you, getting past a place of confidence, etc. What was it like for you to either get that call or see that article where you see that you featured in New York Times or even Forbes magazine? What was that like for you?
Um, when I got the call for New York Times, I was so proud of myself. I
Mm-hmm.
was just so excited, and I felt like, okay, yes, like I'm making strides. Like people are starting to really see the work that I'm doing.
Mhm.
So it was a big honor, and I remember that when the New York Times came out, I was running around in
Mm-hmm.
LA. I think I ended up going to the Marriott by the airport because, first of all, like nobody knows where to buy news. Like there's no newsstand on the corner anymore,
True, not anymore. Yeah.
right? And
Mm-mm.
there's barely any bookstores either.
Right.
So I was like, okay, who gets the paper? Hotels get the paper and they
Yeah.
deliver it to your door every
Hmm.
morning. So
Right.
I called the Marriott. I was like, did you get the New York Times today? So I drove up and got the New York Times from the Marriott. And like it just felt so empowering for me. Like
Mm.
at that point, and that was still very early. I was past my divorce. I was now living in LA. I was regrouping my life after, moving with two small children. I was living with my parents. Like it was a whole, like, again, personal reset while also trying to grow this business.
Right.
Um, and I just sat there and I was just like, every decision that I've made has been the right decision. Every decision that I've made has led me to be in the New York Times.
Hmm.
And it was just a reassurance of faith. It was a reassurance of my confidence and just really like owning this journey that I'm on. Um, and I look at stuff like that, like, oh, well, I'm on the New York Times now. What's next? So
Right.
for me, it was just very hopeful for what was to come in the future for me.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Believe it or not, we're creeping up on the end of our time together, and
Really?
it's gone by quick.
There's still so
It's
much to say.
Yeah, there is, and it's been so enjoyable, and we really appreciate you being here. Sherelle does this phenomenal recap that will kind of wrap us up. But two things I want to ask from you. You mentioned that from as a family, you all like to go have fun together. But what does Samara like to do in your own personal time to enjoy life? So what do you consider fun? What is it that you do when you take time off, decompress, travel, whatever it is? What is it that you like to do? So that's one thing. And then the
Hmm.
last thing, if you'll just give us, 3 points, three nuggets that that our listeners can live by, and maybe And I always tell people pick one of them. Don't try to pick all of them, but pick one that speaks to you and try to implement in your life. What would those be? And then the last thing, how can they reach out? What are your handles, social
Okay,
media? And
so you're gonna have to break all of this down again because like it's like a six-pronged circle
Yeah.
at this point.
Okay.
But
So,
okay, so the first question was, what do I do for
Mhm.
me?
Right.
I like to go hiking. I'm an only child. I have two older siblings, but the age gap is so different that I'm I have half siblings that are 20 and 25 years older than me. So
Oh
I
wow.
was pretty much raised as an only child,
Hmm.
and I value my alone time,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
So for myself, like, and I remember even when my kids were younger, like I didn't put my kids on timeout. I put myself on timeout.
Okay.
And like I'm overwhelmed. Like it's too many people in the rooms, too many people yelling, it's too much noise. Like I need a break.
Hmm.
So like I like to spend time alone. I like to meditate. I'll of course indulge in going to the spa and just relaxing and luxuriating.
Okay.
But I've started to kind of go on these personal pilgrimages.
Mm.
And so last year I went to Machu Picchu,
Oh,
and I went with my mother. But it was it was a meditation and it was a hiking trip. It was a spiritual trip for me. And it was one of those things about being in nature, being around on indigenous ancient land,
hmm.
that helps me to kind of just get grounded and get centered in who I am as a person, as a being. And this year, I went to Joshua Tree for a week by myself.
Okay.
And again, it was one of those things where I just needed some time to literally just go to the desert and wander in the desert for days, and just really reconnect with the land, tap into the land's spiritual energy, and just get grounded and refocus, get all the clutter and stuff out of my brain, and just, get centered into who I am.
Okay.
So that's truly something that I enjoy doing. I was planning on going to Egypt next year, but with so much conflict in the region, I'm going to probably have to rethink that.
Okay.
But again, I'll probably wander off and be hiking on some mountain or in the desert. I really love the desert, so I'll probably go back to Arizona or something.
Wonderful. Yeah, my wife just got back from Egypt and loved it. Loved
Hmm.
it.
So that's somewhere I'll have to go. Next time you decide to go to the desert, phone me and let me know. That's one place I have not hiked, but I love hiking too. So,
Yeah.
speaking my language about finding your footing in nature somewhere for sure.
Yeah, that Joshua Tree is a very magical place. It's billions of years old, right? And so just the energy in that space is just, it's ancient wisdom that even if you can't feel it, see it, it
Hmm.
soaks into your body. It settles your spirit. So
Wow. It
yeah,
sounds like it just you talking about it. Uh,
yeah.
so your three nuggets.
My three nuggets. Whew. Okay. Be true to yourself. Be
Okay.
absolutely true to yourself. And that's a hard one for Black women in particular because we haven't given ourselves permission and haven't been given permission by anybody else to really find out who we are.
Hmm.
Uh, and so I guess it's discover who you are. And as soon as you discover who you are, be true to that.
Okay.
That's my number one thing. I guess number two would be um, no is a complete sentence.
Okay. Yeah.
Make people respect your no.
Hmm.
And on that note, the number three is um, know your worth.
Okay.
And especially as an entrepreneur, sometimes we are, as women, are intimidated about our pricing and what it costs to do business with us, or
Hmm.
the opportunity may seem so great that we don't want to, we want the opportunity so much that we're willing to sacrifice the compensation that goes along with that opportunity.
Okay.
And it is absolutely no, you must show your worth and then add tax, right? And
Hmm.
even if you've got to inflate it by, a certain amount of money or a certain percentage in order to negotiate back down to what your real price is,
Hmm.
know your worth and stick to your worth.
Got it. Love
Mhm.
it. Love it. Love it. And for people that want to follow you or contact you, what are your social media handles?
So For my personal social media handle, it's Sammy B Davis, SammyBee Davis.
Right.
And then for my business, the one that most folks follow is Black Bourbon Society. So it's at Black Bourbon Society.
Okay.
And that's
Wonderful.
Instagram. Instagram is the best way to connect with me.
Okay. You all heard it.
Awesome.
Follow her, Sammy B Davis,
Mhm.
and also follow Black Bourbon Society. I think you'll probably learn a lot about bourbon and
Mhm.
join a group of people that are doing some great things on a relaxation side of life. So, we're following all these things about how to do better and do this and do that. And, it's great to find a group of people that you can just chill out with and have a bourbon and learn more about bourbon with. So thank you for your time. I'm going to pass it over to
Yeah.
Sherelle.
Yeah. And I have a couple more questions before we actually close out. I know we got a couple of minutes here as well, but the one I wanted to ask you, which this is mental health, right? And we're kind of
Mhm.
delving into the space of mental health and really, all of our guests have really talked about how mental health has impacted them or affected them at some point in time within our life. We had Captain Juanica Harper last week, and one of the things she talked about was just kind of how she leveraged therapy as a way to help her through a lot of loss and grieving, things of that nature. So as you have, and you've talked about, the space of working in a predominantly white male industry, how has mental health and actually seeing a therapist in your entrepreneurial journey helped you?
It's helped me a number of ways. So, of course, I've talked about seeing a therapist more for my personal life, but over time, like the type of help you seek changes. So I've had a therapist to help me with that, but I've also had a business coach that had really helped me to understand how to be a leader, which is also a part of mental health. Like if you can't really be a strong leader unless you're really solid in who you are. And again, knowing that worthiness, being confident in charging your pricing and what you can offer. I learned all of that through a business coach as well. But no, mental health is everything. Again, like entrepreneurship can be a very lonely road, and not that many are on this path, and not many people no one does what I do in my industry. I'm kind of charting my own path with this. But there's not a lot of mentors for me to have in my industry, just for the simple fact that I'm kind of the first to do it. So, yeah, being solid in who I am, being confident in who I am, being confident in the decisions that I make, it's so key. I don't think that I would have made it this far if I didn't have a therapist on speed dial when I need them, or if I didn't have a strong meditation and strong spirituality practice. I like it's the root of everything, before you can even get going. Because again, as an entrepreneur, you learn how to walk by faith, not by sight. So that faith piece, that confidence piece, that grit to just keep going no matter what your bank account looks like that day, or no matter what upcoming bills you have, like all of that takes fortitude. And we have it within us, but a therapist, a good support system, a business coach, a great mentor, they help to pull it out of us.
Now, I want to ask a question for all of the parents and all of those individuals that have, we've got babies to attend to, we've got little people who are kind of pulling on us while we're trying to, grow our organizations as well and still be able to thrive. Like when you think about how you've been able to balance just, the space of balancing life and entrepreneurship as you have grown throughout your career. Talk to me a little bit about what that's like for you, just the balance of mothering, business owner, just, dominating things. How has that been for you?
It's going. I think, this is where we as mothers and as Black women just have to really give ourselves a ton of grace. And we just have to know that, like, we do the best that we can. with the things that we have, like with the resources that we have. And not everybody can afford a nanny. Not everybody can afford to have, help, or even not everyone has a spouse that can help. Right? There's a lot of us. There's a lot of single moms that are out there doing the exact same grind. Um, the best thing that I can say is that, like, there is no such thing as balance. And Sherelle, this is you and this is both our birthday months, so I'm going to assume that we're both Libras in this, right? And our thing is having that balance, right? But that just doesn't exist in motherhood and entrepreneurship. Like, it's just impossible to maintain. So it's letting go of that expectation and just really taking the day as the day comes, doing your best with what you can do. One of the things that I do love, and we kind of talked about this earlier, was that the thing that I love about entrepreneurship is that you have freedom. So if I've got to spend my afternoon picking up my daughter or my son, or if I've got to volunteer a couple hours at their school, then I do that. But then on the back end, I know that, all right, well, I'm pulling an all-nighter tonight, or I might be up till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, making sure that my tasks will get done during the day. And if it's if I can't work a day because I don't feel well, or I've got something else going on, then I may lose a Saturday. But it's just finding the balance. It's just finding the balance the best way that you can. Whatever sanity looks like for you is balance, right? So whatever, it's just grace,
Yeah.
it's hard. There's no way around it. But grace allows us to kind of ease up off ourselves and just roll with it.
And having patience with ourselves, I
Yeah.
think that is just so important to have. Okay, so since Lee's already asked for your handles and he's already got your nuggets, so what I'm going to do is do a quick recap of some of the key points that I've captured during our time, and then also invite all of our viewers that if you're just tuning in, you are tuned into Women with Grit with Samara B. Davis. You want to go to the beginning of this, so make sure that you catch the replay of this specific segment for sure. Do not use this summary as your excuse for having gotten some critical points. Go to the back, absolutely walk through it, because I didn't capture everything. Okay. All right. So Samara said, when it comes to the space of really, really delving into grit, she says, have grit and also the courage to step into spaces that may not even be on par with your industry, may not necessarily be an industry. And she talked about, for her, delving into the bourbon and spirits industry, an industry that has been primarily dominated by white men. For her, it was really being able to have the grit, the confidence, the space to really break into that particular industry. So definitely have the courage to do that. Recognize that it takes courage to step into a leadership role and really owning your space and own the space that you occupy. You have to get used to the grit that it takes sometimes, and then also to move with it, and also to continue to push the barriers so that you can succeed. Your support system matters when it comes to being able to delve and thrive. So as you're growing, whether you're an entrepreneur or in corporate, identify those people that can help you along the way, that can champion your success, that can raise their hand and say, hey, give her or him or whomever a chance at this as well. Recognize that all entrepreneurs need a therapist. And she talked about just the space of, in entrepreneurship, it can be a lonely journey. There are things that you will have to work through as a whole. And so the nature of having a therapist is important. And I'm going to kind of put my kickstand down here, because again, as we're closing out Mental Health Month, every single one of our guests this month, interestingly enough, have all alluded to the space of mental health and being able to lean into mental health, whether that's having a therapist. I think it was guest Tony Kelly who said you can have a therapist, God, and you can have God, your faith, and a therapist, right? But you need all three. But also she said that also, Samara said, overcome perfectionism and recognize that it doesn't have to be perfect in order for you to move forward. Recognize that it is also important to have moments of reflection where you are constantly connecting and checking in with yourself and really being able to be present in what is happening with you and within you. Be comfortable admitting the role that you play or played in relationships, and it's that piece of taking ownership and recognizing your contributions to where a relationship is. Be okay with things that may not work out the way that you want, and recognize that you are exactly where you need to be, and the situation is exactly that it needs to be in the specific moment. But what are the things and the experiences that you can glean and learn from it? Work hard, play hard, but also celebrate the small wins along the way. It is so important to not only work hard and have that grit, but also to give yourself the space as well as the ability to relax. Own your own journey. It is uniquely yours, and therefore no one else can walk it except you. Find your footing, and sometimes it can be found in nature. So be comfortable taking long walks or going on hikes, finding yourself amongst water. Be true to yourself. Discover who you are and be true to who you are. And recognize that no is a complete sentence in it and of itself. Know your worth as an entrepreneur and as a woman, and be comfortable exercising that tax, right? Get what you deserve and what you believe you should be paid for. Have a strong faith in order to finish strong. And remember, she said, in life, sometimes you need that gal. You need that person or that individual that can also be there to help you in your success. So the question I have for you is really, who is that friend that you can call when you need something, when you need the ability to lean in, when you're working through your own idiosyncrasies or overcoming self-limiting beliefs? Who's that person that can help you through it? Who's that person that can champion your success? Who is that person that you can lean in? And then lastly, also understand the space of your lineage and how that can contribute to your state, but also, and also simply be true to yourself and recognize that sometimes you are the person that is uniquely defined to shatter whatever the stereotype is in your specific industry. Wow, this has been such an amazing time. Thank you so much, Samara, for your time and for gracing the stage of Women with Grit. We're so excited to have this hour to spend with you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing me on. This was wonderful.
Absolutely. And if you guys are tuning in, continue to like us, subscribe, and follow us, because we'll be right back here next week with another amazing woman right here on Women with Grit. Take care. Bye.